Welcome to the Wellness Rebel Show, where you reclaim your health and tap into your body's healing power. I'm your host, Fatima, here to empower you with the knowledge and tools to take charge of your well-being. Whether you want to boost energy, improve mindset, or unlock vitality, this is your go-to source for practical advice and inspiration. It's time to step into your power and live a life of health and freedom. Welcome to the revolution. Welcome back to the Wellness Rebel Show. Today I have Jasmine Parker, and she's going to talk all things Hashimoto's and thyroid stuff, right? Hey, Jasmine.
Yes. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Good. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I appreciate it.
I'm so excited for you to be here and share your journey and what your strategies are when it comes to Hashimoto's. Let's start with sharing who you are and your journey.
Yeah, so I'm Jasmine. I'm a registered nurse, functional medicine certified health coach, the founder of Love Your Thyroid, and a new author to the book Hidden Healing, A Nurse's Path to Overcoming Hashimoto's and How You Can Too. So for me, my journey, which I explain and go through in my book, is really about how, as a medical professional and having a little more understanding than the average person of the medical setting, I still had no idea what was happening to me during my health crisis. You see, I started with a concussion at the end of 2020, and we know how pandemic mode was, especially for bedside nurses. It's very stressful. A lot of things were happening. I got really sick back-to-back months at the beginning of that year when we started. And then I ended that towards the end of the year with a concussion. And so while I was dealing with post-concussion symptoms, things started dramatically getting worse. And we had looked at everything. And when I say we looked at everything, it was really looking at the symptoms that was going on with me, and everything we could fit into that post-concussion syndrome box, we did. We shoved everything in there that we could. Anything that didn't fit that picture, that original diagnosis, we kind of sent me out to other specialists to figure out what the problem was and really focus on specific symptoms. You know, when my face started breaking out in a rash and down my neck and my shoulders, I was sent to the dermatologist. And when I was having migraines that just absolutely wouldn't go away, I was sent to the neurologist. When my heart rate all of a sudden was resting at 150 to 180 doing anything, which is abnormal, you know, we had to do a cardiac monitor and figure out these little things that didn't quite fit in this box. And while that was helpful to some degree of like, okay, we have one diagnosis, we know what's going on, we actually completely missed the picture altogether. The fact that something else was developing underneath, unbeknownst to us. And for me, I just, as the patient, you know, you have that underlying feeling of like, something's changed. Something's wrong. This isn't normal for me. This isn't normal at all. This isn't right. Something is going on. And for me, already having a diagnosis, I got further dismissed as like, you know, maybe you're just stressed, Jasmine. You know, maybe it's just anxiety. We can get you something for that. Are you sure you just don't want to go back to work? Is that what this is? Like, pandemic's hard. Like, there's a lot of stress. There's a lot of chaos going on. And it felt really like discouraging. It's like, no, I'm not trying to avoid anything here, but like something truly is wrong. Something has changed course, direction here. And I couldn't figure out how to really display that other than something is wrong, which I'm sure a lot of women feel when they're like, I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. All I know is something is wrong. This isn't me. And it's very common to hear that. And so I wanted to share my story of that because even being a medical professional and knowing to advocate for myself, I imagine all those women in those clinic rooms who don't have that extended knowledge or don't know how to advocate for themselves. And it makes me feel really, really sad because I had a really hard time for that. And I want people to know that. I want them to know, even at the highest level, like we can't give an excuse to, oh, you're a medical professional, like you know how to do it more, you know more. I did, but it still happened to me. It happens to a lot of us, unfortunately. And so going through these struggles, I was starting to have like this loss of hope, right? Like we're never going to figure out what's right or what's going wrong. We're never going to get like off of any of these medications. I had gone from 1 to 10, constantly changing either medication or dosage, we're not going to get away from it. And I wasn't able to function with even working my job. My brain just could not. It was overstimulated. It couldn't remember things. I couldn't think very clearly. Everything was very foggy. I was tired all of the time. I just couldn't keep up with the workload that was demanded of a nurse, which is a lot. And so I tried to talk to a friend of mine who was my good friend and chiropractor at the time. And she kind of shared with me in a way of relation about her own husband's struggle with something going dramatically wrong and getting a conventional answer, but she didn't agree with it. She thought there was something more going on. And so she shared that journey with me and introduced me to functional medicine altogether. And now as a, conventional practitioner, I was like, I don't know what this is. I have no idea. I've never heard that term before. What is this? Because to me, being conventionally trained as a registered nurse, there's only one way of medicine. There's no other way of medicine. So I was like, what is this? But at that time, when you're so desperate to feel better in any degree, you will try anything. And I'm telling you, anything. And so for me, I was like, what the heck? I don't know what this is, but at least it's something to try. And so I went to this functional medicine provider and my mind was blown. I'm like, what is this world? I felt like I stepped on another planet. I'm like, wait a second. Why is this not the way that we're practicing medicine? Looking for the root cause when we don't understand things instead of just slapping band-aids over symptoms. Why isn't this the way that it is? It's very confusing to me. And so as I went through this process with my functional medicine provider, within that first visit, this is very important, first visit, he was able to connect all of my symptoms that I was having, full sheet list of symptoms, and said, Jasmine, I think you have a thyroid problem. And of course, I'm like, I had a concussion. How do I have a thyroid problem? This doesn't make any sense to me. And he kind of walked me through what happens. And after further testing, we found out it was an autoimmune thyroid condition called Hashimoto's, of course. And so from there, we kind of went down this road for about 6 months of where we started digging into how my condition got activated in the first place, right? Because Hashimoto's is a genetic condition, And so we looked at how it got activated, and I learned a lot on that journey. Everything that I had been exposed to or experienced since birth had significantly made an impact on my health up until that current age that I was diagnosed. Everything. We looked at where I lived, how I was born, was I breastfed, bottle fed? We looked at everything. Things were coming up on my lab results, like heavy metals that are equivalent with that of a smoker, but I had never smoked in my life. And it was just me being secondhand to all of that growing up. So my environment, we went through all of that growing up. Things I didn't have control of, things I have control of now, what my lifestyle looks like, the stress of just being a nurse, the pandemic that's happening, the illnesses that kind of happen, everything leading up, cascading to what we call a perfect storm, essentially. And at that moment, I was like, holy crap, I have an answer. And it's one thing to have an answer. It's another to get to remission, right? Yeah. It's like when we walk out of conventional medicine with that diagnosis and we're like, oh, finally, I have an answer. But it's what do we do with our life after that? And what I learned being one foot in at that time in conventional medicine and another foot in to functional medicine at that time was that there was this gap. Conventional medicine can give you the diagnosis and they can give you their treatment plan, but then it just ends after that. There is nothing else you get told, nothing. And as someone whose job is literally to educate, I was like, what am I supposed to be doing now? I'm someone very much at that point that wanted to control their health. I did not want anyone else to, and I did not want to succumb to my diagnosis. I'm like, what do I do now? And there wasn't really an answer that didn't sit right with me. I'm like, there has to be something. And so I took everything that I learned from functional medicine and diving into the research and kind of put it together in this book, right? Meeting my journey with the educational pieces to help people understand that they're not crazy. There's just a gap in care that is happening, and they just need the right resources and tools and education in order to empower themselves to take control of their health again, to love their thyroid again, and that they're not alone in this journey. This happens to a lot of people. There are 90% of people who have hypothyroidism are autoimmune. And so they're definitely not alone. But when you have a diagnosis that you can't see every day, people can't feel, you feel so isolated and alone. And so this book is to help give that hope to people that it's not your circumstance. It's not because you're not a medical professional and don't know anything. It's not that. You're not crazy. You're not alone. If you feel a change has happened in your body, it probably has. You spend 24/7 with yourself. You know when something has changed, and you have to believe in that. And sometimes what happens is when we get to the doctor's office and we're in front of someone we trust and they're just like, oh, that's not what's happening, we start to lose hope and belief in our own bodies. We give that away to somebody else when it's not theirs to hold. They probably see you for 5 minutes a day and you're with yourself 24/7. And so it's to give that kind of nod to them of, I see you and I hear you and I've been there and I understand, and it's not you. It's not you. It's the system, and there's a gap in care, and I just need people to understand that.
I love that. That's very, very inspiring. And I love that you said to take charge of their health, because that's one of the aims of the podcast is you don't have to give up your power to anyone else despite them having the white coat and them telling you that they know better than you just because you don't have a degree, or gaslighting you for how you're feeling. So this book is going to be a very powerful one.
I truly hope so. And I think the other part to that is sometimes we forget that our own stories are incredibly powerful and that they can really, truly be lifelines for someone else if we just have the courage to share. I shared this with a friend just earlier today about the same concept of how I can't even read the first chapter of my book. Like it's very raw and emotional for me. It's very vulnerable to share that with people. And it's a very dark place that you get put in when you're suffering. And it's not something that you want to share with people for whatever reason. However, when we share powerful, impactful stories like that, it truly gives that lifeline to someone else who's feeling the same way, but either doesn't know how to express it, doesn't know how to share it, doesn't know how to voice up for it. And it makes them feel seen and heard, like they've got this internally, right? They've got this. They get the courage, they get the hope, they get the empowerment to stand up and do something, right? And so I think, it really just comes back to that advocation piece. And I want to give that power back to them because they do have it. They truly have it.
So what would be like the most common symptoms one would usually experience if there's a problem, if the thyroid is struggling?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I say that because our thyroid symptoms that we feel actually kind of get us in trouble a little bit. And what I mean by that is our thyroid hormones impact nearly every cell and organ in our body. So what that means is that it's going to have very vague symptoms and it's not going to make sense. And therefore, it can be easily dismissed by our providers or ourselves. Let's be honest. Sometimes we're like, it's probably just this, we're fine. Or it gets us into a space where we're misdiagnosed because it mimics or looks like something else. And so some common ones that I'm sure a lot of you who are suffering with it are aware is, you have the cold hands and feet, you have that weight gain, you can't get rid of it. You've got the hair loss, you've got the fatigue, you're just tired all the time, the brain fog, the afternoon crashes. We just have all of these things that most of them are easy enough for us to be like, I just didn't eat enough today. I didn't hydrate enough today. You know what? Work was really hard, or I'm under a lot of stress right now. And those are also dismissals for yourself, like I mentioned, but you also get that same answer from your doctor, right? Maybe you're just stressed. Maybe you're just anxious. We give ourselves those same excuses before we actually go and see somebody. So they can be very vague, but again, a lot of them are the weight gain, the brain fog, the anxiety, the fatigue, yes, anxiety and depression are a part of them. And then the same with like the cold hands and feet, the hair loss, things like that.
Yeah, definitely. And I know too, like a lot of women who especially have kids, they're gonna be like, it's just because you're kids, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
like there's really a lot of excuse. I feel like too, it's just the way that we are programmed as women
Yes.
that we're like,
Yes.
well, I'm fine. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
doing too much, or and then we kind of like easily believe what others tell us.
Yep. I agree 100% with that. It is so easy as a mother, as a high achieving woman, as a career woman, as like women in general. We just
Yeah.
operate on a very high platform all of the time. And so that's what I mean by like we dismiss ourselves. Like we have to take that ownership of by the time we get to the doctor, we have probably dismissed ourselves so many times until we're finally like dragging ourselves into the office like, I don't feel good. And they're like,
Yeah.
you probably need more sleep, or you're stressed, or you're anxious, go home. And you're like, great. I thought those things too.
Right. Go on a vacation.
Yeah, go on vacation.
So in your journey, did you ever also get the connection or, like you know how they say usually if there's a thyroid problem, there's also issues with the adrenals. Was that the case for you?
Yeah, it was, and I honestly think it is for a lot of people because the thyroid and the adrenals are really a feedback loop for each other. So when there's imbalance in one, there's usually imbalance in another, and our body works very hard every single day to keep us in that balance, that homeostasis, basically. And so when we look at thyroid hormones or thyroid issues, we also look at adrenal issues because a lot of things that, like symptom wise, like the fatigue, the brain fog, the crashes, a lot of that is also signs of our adrenals not working sufficiently. They are overworked.
Yeah.
That is exactly where our stress hormones come from, is from our adrenals. So it's so easy to be like, oh, it's stress, oh, it's anxiety, because they mimic them. They really do, but they actually go hand in hand, which is why when you work on somebody who has hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's, we also have to be addressing the adrenals with that. And that's why a whole body approach is 100% necessary in order to get us, in remission or back on track.
And so, how about what would be a lot of the contributing factors to, like that affects our thyroids and our adrenals?
Yeah, so when we look at somebody who has hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's, it's not, we like to blame our thyroid for just about everything because rightfully so, it does impact nearly everything, to be fair.
Yeah.
But it's actually not the problem. Like it works in tandem with our entire system. And so we also have to look at the other pieces and what's failing. And so part of me starts always with the gut in that. And it is true, as Hippocrates said, all disease begins in the gut. And the way that it feeds back to each other essentially is with our gut, if it is not functioning optimally, and that is both digestion, that is, our digestive enzymes that are being released, all the timing of everything impacts our thyroid. Our thyroid is like our thermostat of our body. You've heard that, right? So when we're cold all the time with hypothyroidism, everything slows down, and that includes our digestion. And that's where we kind of get that constipation from. Everything is slowing down. And when our thyroid is in control of extracting vitamins and minerals from, our food, and it's acting sluggish, it does so less efficiently. And so then our body is not getting, people can say, I'm eating really good, I'm taking vitamins and supplements, but your body isn't absorbing them. It's not extracting them as efficiently or the way that it should be. Because your thyroid is slower, you're trying to give it those nutrients, but then it runs into the gut problem of you having low stomach acid, for instance, or the digestion. Everything has slowed down because of the hormones, and it's not able to get the body what it needs, and that includes our adrenals as well. Everything kind of goes slowly. And so our adrenals want to try and help out with everything that's going slow and be like, hey, go a little faster. And it just doesn't work that way. We just end up in this like feedback loop. And our adrenals are why we have those afternoon crashes, is because our blood sugar is dysregulated as well.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah. And
sometimes I talk in a loop, so.
No, that was great. How about, like you said, that functional medicine doctor, right? They did the whole like deep dive of your health history, like your exposures and all that stuff. Would you say that a lot of the environmental toxins that we're getting bombarded now is one of the reasons why we're also suffering with our thyroids?
Yeah, it's easy to say that. I mean, the world we live in is bombarding us all of the time with environmental toxins from everything in our water, in our food, in our air, in the products that we use every single day. That's just the reality of everything. There's a lot of toxins out there that we are exposed to every day. And we really have to work on decreasing our toxic load. And so, especially for people who have hypothyroidism, right? Like I said, everything is slowed down. And that includes our detoxification. So now our detoxification, our liver, is all those processes are slowed down. On top of it, we're being overly bombarded with toxins every single day. Some of those things we can't help, and some of them we very much can. And so that's where we address the lifestyle part of it and decreasing their toxic burden. And when we look at those two things, our detoxification system can do everything on its own. We have one, it does everything, we shouldn't need to help it. However, because we are so overloaded and because it's slowed down with hypothyroidism, it's not working as efficiently either. And so it needs extra support from us to get out all of those buildups that are happening and causing us symptoms. So I absolutely agree that the environmental toxins that we're exposed to today definitely impact our thyroid health and just the symptoms that we can feel from that too.
I agree 100%. It's like a battle, right? It's like our battle every single day are the toxins, but you definitely don't want to get stressed out over the things you can't control. But then take power and that knowledge and take control of what you can.
Yeah, and it's so powerful to understand that too, right? Because we can get easily swept up, and I'm someone who's an all or nothing thinker 90% of the time. We can get very easily swept up in, oh, I can't have any of these things. Everything's got to go. But the reality is we have to first bring awareness to it. Like we have to have self-awareness of, oh, this is bad for me. I need to change this. And then we also need to have consistency with that and then a why. And the reason we need to have a why anytime we make one of these changes is because this is a lifestyle change. You are going to have this for the rest of your life. So it's not going to be easy. We are going to fall off the wagon. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to have cheat days on things, but that's just part of being human. We're trying to adjust to a change that we literally uprooted, something that we've held so deeply for a long time, and all of a sudden are told this is the wrong thing to do and we have to change it. And that can be very hard. And so people like myself who have an all or nothing mindset, we try and change everything at one time, and then it becomes overwhelming. And then we just go back to what we went to. Or sometimes people don't think about when they make changes, the cost of them. A lot of healthy things, while it seems ridiculous, is very expensive compared to all of the cheap bad things, right? And so it costs a lot too. So we also have to look at the financial impact that is happening on people. And we don't want people to get in a mindset of feeling shameful or guilty that they know this is bad, they have the awareness, but they're not able to do something about it because they don't have the means to. That is a whole different part. We don't want to shame people into that. And so I lead with, kind of like you mentioned, the empowerment of control what you can control and own that. And then the rest will come, right? It's baby steps. And the consistency is never linear. Consistency is this. Throughout your entire life, you're going to fall off. Just own that. You're going to make a mistake. Own that. It's okay.
Yeah, and you can get up and start over. No shame in that.
Absolutely. And exactly. And that's where consistency comes from, is recognizing, hey, I made a mistake today, or I made a mistake at lunchtime. Let's just say I ate something I wasn't supposed to. You can have awareness and you can do better the next meal, or you can do better the next day. That consistency is constantly getting back up and doing better the next time and doing better the next time until it eventually just becomes your new habit that you don't fall off. You don't even need to think about it. It's automatic now.
Right? It becomes like autopilot.
Yes, like autopilot.
Yeah.
Very good example.
So, do you have any tips or strategies that are, let's start with the free ones, that are free that someone can do to slowly start the healing process?
Yeah. Two of them that I would say off the bat. The first one is anyone with autoimmunity in general. This is very controversial, so I know how you all feel about it, but gluten has a very big impact on our gut health. And as you know, anyone with autoimmunity has a component of leaky gut. And so gluten leads to that leaky gut. It stresses out the intestinal lining. And so that is usually my first step is take out gluten. And while I wouldn't recommend just like cold, like, hey, take this out, you can never have it again. Because again, we don't want to create food fear. And that's not what this is. But when you are in kind of crisis mode in your body and you're feeling absolutely terrible, take it out. Take it out for a couple weeks. Take it out for 3 months. Let your body calm down, because it's that inflammation we want to drive down immediately. So sticking to like an anti-inflammatory diet, take out that gluten, which is very inflammatory for the system, and allow the body to kind of settle down. That would be like the first thing that I would do. And that's what we did back when I was healing, is we took out, we did a little more extreme. We did an elimination diet. That's not for everybody, of course, but that was the best thing I did. It was very hard, do not get me wrong, because you're eliminating all of the major categories and kind of just going back to very basic, whole foods and everything like that. But we really wanted to drive that inflammation down immediately. And so that's what I would recommend nutritionally. You can do a lot through your nutrition. And for people who are like, I don't know, it may be a little expensive to get like organic things, I understand. I was there. And when you're struggling with food and nutrition specifically, my one comment, because people can get overwhelmed with this, they can develop food fears, which is what we don't want, is choose quality above everything else. Choose quality. Maybe there's only a handful of fruits you can get organically and the rest you get normal. Just start reducing that inflammation in any way that you can with your nutrition. That would be my first thing. My second thing is the stress management needs to be acknowledged. A lot of times, people with autoimmune diseases, who are mostly women, by the way, like we mentioned earlier, we are on a whole different level of competition with ourselves or with anyone else. Like, we are operating on a whole different level of work, of overdrive. And so there's a lot of stress that happens. And sometimes when we hear, oh, stress management, just like, okay, whatever. I'm like, sure, maybe I'll get a massage today, or, maybe I'll take a deep breath here, and that's good. I get it. I was there too. I was like, yeah, whatever. I don't really buy into it, right? But now I'm in a different space, because you realize how much stress impacts your body and drives up inflammation. And I'm not just talking about stress like, oh my God, I was late to work today, I had to speak in front of a bunch of people, I don't know how this presentation went. I'm talking about all kinds of stress. The stress we put on our body from it being overburdened by toxins, the stress we put on our body from the poor diet that we're eating, the stress we put on our body from, not getting enough exercise either. And we'll talk about that too with Hashimoto's. That's a little bit different for us. But, the stress or the exercise that we're not getting, or, when we're not getting enough sleep because we're a mom and we're up all the time operating on like level 20. There's a lot of stress going on. And the matter of the fact is, the more and more stress that you put on your body, the gut lining cannot keep up in keeping it sealed And so then it starts to open up, and that's where that leaky gut comes from. Then everything else that you're eating, any bacteria, any big particles of food are leaking out of that gut into that bloodstream and causing an immune system reaction. And so understanding that, we really, really want to drive down, again, the inflammation, and stress is a huge part of that. It's not just nutritionally. So those are the two things that I would work on like immediately, and they're like for free. Like think of a million things that would be stress reducing to you, and like find your top two and really hone that skill of doing it every single day.
Yeah, 100% agree. I love how you said, yeah, we are operating at a different level. It's like, I have 400 tabs open in my
Yeah. It's so true though. It's so true though. And I like to call it thyroid brain, because I still forget, or maybe it's concussion, who knows, past time, but I still forget. And, we're operating like that all of the time, where we're trying to remember everything, and we're in charge of so many people's schedules, not only our own. And it can become very overwhelming. And so we just have to learn, in that sense, delegation. But, when you don't have help, you don't have help. So it's really just taking a look at your life and what's happening, and addressing what you can right now in time until you can address the whole picture.
Yeah, I know. That's really the one thing I feel like most women have like a pushback, or when you tell them like you need to reduce or manage stress, and they're just like, okay, how do I do that?
That is not an option. Can you give me anything else? Trust me, I understand. I had the same mindset and about stress in altogether. I'm like, I just move fast. Like everything is fast in my world. I walk fast. I talk fast. I can't sit still. Like I have to be doing something. I have to be constantly helping. I understand 100% where that comes from, of like, no, because we don't want to settle down. We don't know what that feels like to be grounded, to be centered, to be calm. We literally thrive in chaos. We don't know what that means. And so because we're unfamiliar with it, it can be a little intimidating. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. Let's do something else. Let's do anything else.
Like it feels like going into a dark cave and you don't know if there's a bear inside it.
100%. 100%.
Okay, well, you mentioned exercise, and it's different, how it looks different for people with Hashimoto's or autoimmune. So can you share how different that looks?
Yeah, so it kind of goes back to your question on the adrenals, right? So when we're looking at people with Hashimoto's or hypothyroidism, we're addressing the simple fact that we are tired all of the time. We don't have time or energy for anything else, and that includes exercise. Like I can't get myself there. That's a common thing to experience. And where the adrenals kind of come into play is if we are so stressed out, if our adrenals are so burned out, you're not going to be able to do anything. So running or doing HIIT workouts is not the answer for a burnt out adrenal. You are pushing, and it cannot take any more. And so while you think you're doing your body a service by like, I'm working out, I'm running all the time, I'm doing all these hard workouts, that's part of the problem. The problem is when our adrenals are in that stressed out state, that burnt out state, we need something a little bit better for our system, something more aerobic like yoga, Pilates, weightlifting, or like strength training, that is what we're talking about. Those are easier to start out when you're trying to, when your adrenals are burnt out, you're suffering from, a flare up of Hashimoto's, like that's where you want to live. And that's not where you have to live all of the time. You just need to get, your adrenals back into an optimal state first. And then you can go ahead and, enjoy the running, the bike rides, the HIIT workouts. But there comes a time and a place of you tailoring your workouts essentially. And so when you're running on low and you can feel it, you're tired all the time, stop pushing yourself to the max. It cannot take it. You're creating actually more stress on your body, which, as we talked about, drives more inflammation into your system. So it's not helping it, it's actually hurting it. And so we have to look at the state of where our adrenals are. Depending on the stage, determines the workout that is probably going to be better for you, because you should always walk away from a workout feeling better, not.
Yeah.
So that's your indicator. If you're walking away feeling worse or you can't do it, that's a concern that you're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah. They do say that running is kind of like very counterintuitive. Like you're telling your body that you're running away from a predator.
Yeah.
That because we have that caveman or lizard brain, and it doesn't really know what's making you run or causing the stress,
Yeah.
right? So, do you have any tips or like simple ways, like let's say someone is in a stressful situation, like
Mm-hmm.
are there like just simple ways to kind of like you know signal your brain or your body that hey, we're not really that stressed and now the stress is over and whatnot, so you can get out of that fight or flight?
Yeah, that's such a good question because our brains do not know the difference when we activate our fight or flight mode. Our brains do not know the difference between us needing to run from a bear and us just running late in general. It cannot distinguish that. And so you get the same reaction as if you were running from a bear. And so if you are chronically having those fight or flight activations, you are literally running baseline, chronically stressed and anxious, creating that inflammation at all times. And so we really want to try and settle, nervous system down when that happens. The best way to do that is through breathing, deep breathing. If you just stop and take 3 large, deep breaths in and out, it will help you significantly. I promise. Deep breathing, and you can breathe in a box breathing pattern too, whatever, just there's one that we do in yoga called fire breath. Don't do that one. Don't just do any breathing, but box breathing or just taking 3 deep breaths. The other thing is to tell yourself, if you can, what is factual. And so this helps with panic attacks too. And you'll, experience in my story that I got really bad, that I was starting to have multiple panic attacks a day. And I didn't know how to get myself out of that situation. And it is very challenging when you are going through a panic state to get your own self out of it. You kind of need the help of someone else. And so it's good for me to teach you, but also for you to teach your partner too, if you're someone who's more prone to having panic attacks as well. Is we like to do the 5 senses. So we kind of bring ourselves back into present and we look at, what can I see around me? What can I feel around me? What can I touch around me? What can I smell around me? And something that I like to do very specifically is I will just call out everything in real time. I'm holding my steering wheel with my left hand. I'm in so-and-so car. I'm driving down this road. I'm headed here. This is the date today. Like getting very detailed into what is actually reality and what is happening will help bring you back in, ground you into present mode, and not be in a future state of panic, essentially, worrying about what is going to happen and actually reminding yourself of what is currently happening. That has been super, super helpful for me.
That's great advice. What do you think? I don't know if this is something that you agree with. I know it's also kind of controversial. Adrenal cocktails. When someone's adrenals are burnt out, do you like using adrenal cocktails for that, or is it something that we should stay away from?
Yeah, I know that topic is very controversial too, and a lot of people like to do them as well. But I think there's a lot of different, better modalities, just in my opinion, to use instead of adrenal cocktails. Because at some point too, it's just kind of like a supplement, right? Like we think it's good, but it's like, what are we training our body to do with this? When you take a supplement and it's like, yeah, I this is where you get it from now on, and then when you stop taking it, it's like, where is this coming from? And so I like to look at it like that too. Like, what are we training our body when we're constantly having to have an adrenal cocktail at the same time? But then also, like, is it just a band aid? And what are better ways that we can be addressing, our adrenals altogether instead of, just downing a cocktail full of sugar?
Yeah, yeah. How about like what is it? Adaptogens. I was
Oh,
thinking
adaptogens.
ashwagandha. I'm like adaptogens in
Oh, yeah.
general, right? It gets in when you're these like mom groups, crunchy groups, and then they have like, oh, what do I do for stress? Or,
Mm-hmm.
I know ashwagandha is kind of like quick people are so quick to throw it out there to
Mm-hmm.
help with stress. Like, is that good to use, or like maybe just something temporary?
Yeah, in my world, the way that I like to do things when it comes to really anything that feels like a temporary fix, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
I take it with a grain of salt in that, you can make whatever choice that you want to make for your body, but in my opinion, it's just eventually another band-aid. I think it can be very, very helpful in certain situations, but I think relying on it
Yeah.
heavily is not the best idea. I think there's a lot of other things that we can be doing. And if I want to press the button a little further here, it's, are we ignoring actually addressing our stress issue, or are we just comfortable putting a different type of band-aid over it? And so I'll put up that mindset question of what's our purpose with it? What's our intention with it? Is it like a one-time thing? Is it like, I'm going to take this every day because I'm so stressed? Because then we need to be looking at other things. And we also need to be looking at like our habits around stress altogether, because now we've downgraded from maybe a medical help, but now we are in like a lifestyle band-aid fix as well, which is not
Yeah.
helpful. So I'll throw the question back out there of what is your intention with the ashwagandha? Because I think it can be very helpful. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of wonderful adaptogens and herbs that can help with stress, especially like, we look at T2 for stress reduction, right? I think they can be helpful. It's just, what's your intention with it?
Yeah. Yeah. Very true. And I feel like maybe if you're using it short time, let's say I'm by myself with my 5 kids for 30 days because my husband's away on a work trip, maybe that's kind of like one, like a situation where you can use it, but definitely don't rely on it as something that will help you with your stress for life.
Yeah, because eventually, right, we get used to everything that we're taking all of the time, and eventually it's going to stop working. And then my question is, well, now what? Now what
Right.
are you going to do? Are we actually going to address the stress techniques that we don't have in place? Like, are we actually going to do that? So I think you're absolutely right. I think, like I said, for me personally, in short-term use, like, sure, if you're, in a bind in a situation, we've all been there. There's no judgment on that. But
Yeah.
again, the question just falls in, what is your intention with it?
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
No, funny that you say that. I'm in this group and they were talking about colostrum, right? It's like a big
Mm-hmm.
new thing right now.
Yep.
And this lady was like, "Yeah, I loved using it." And then I think she said she ran out and then she started feeling bad when she was off it and then she was just happy to be back on it. And I'm like, "Oh, there's probably a, underlying problem. Like, why would you need to take something for that long, or like when you stop then you start feeling bad? Like, why would you want that?"
Yeah, and it is very popular. There's, a lot of questions around it, and it can have some health benefits too. But again, the same question just goes back to, what is your intention with it? Because everyone can say, hey, this is good, everyone should take it. But
Yeah.
again, we are all unique individuals. We should all not be taking the same thing,
Right.
like, at all. And if you feel worse coming off of something, that should be your first indicator that something more is going on at the root
Yeah.
level and it's not being addressed. Because if like you're taking something quote unquote good and then you come off of it, because people can take a probiotic too and come off of it and feel even worse. Like, there is
Yeah.
something underlying going on. That should be your first indication. But I know that that's a very popular thing that's going around. I know everyone has like a lot of questions. Should I take it? Should I not? If you've already tried it and like you said, you feel bad afterwards, I mean, that's a key indication something else is going on. And then also to, what I said earlier, like, we are all unique individuals. We all need different things, even different probiotics, because our gut is like a unique fingerprint. So we
Yeah.
shouldn't all be taking the same thing either.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your go-to testing for gut health?
So I love the GI map. It's like the
Okay.
only gut test I will run. I absolutely love it. I think it can tell you a lot about what's going on with your gut health, including a lot of markers that can indicate patterns of like autoimmunity or thyroid issues. So I really love the GI map.
Okay. Who do you help and how do you help them?
So I help women primarily. I know that there are men with Hashimoto's, and my stuff can work for you as well. But I primarily focus on women just like myself who have been diagnosed with Hashimoto's and are kind of in that stage of what now? Like they've gotten their diagnosis, maybe they've gotten their prescription for their lifelong medication, and now they're kind of in this limbo of what do I do? How do I help myself? Because eventually people who are on thyroid medication go back to feeling worse and worse and worse, and nothing's getting better. And so I really help women fill in that gap that is in Hashimoto's care with the education, resources, and tools to help them empower themselves to get on that road to remission by taking ownership of their health.
Got it. Okay, share about your book. Can you tell us what inspired you to write it and what message or impact you hope it will leave with your readers?
That's a very good question. I get this question a lot, and I have a lot of different reasons for why I wrote Hidden Healing. But one of the main reasons is simply because there is this gap that I have become aware of, right? Functional medicine, I had no idea what it was. And there are so many people that come to me and are needing help. And when I ask them what functional medicine is, they have no idea. They just know that they want help. And so this book is a really, really good starting point for people who have just been diagnosed and to understand where the conventional care is coming in, where it stops, and what we can do to help fill that gap, and how functional medicine can really be a turning point for them. And I believe that this is, such a powerful book because, again, so many people don't know about functional medicine and what it can do for them and how it can put their health back into their own hands so that they're not feeling stuck and miserable and trying to move through every day like a whole different person. They're able to come back to loving their thyroid, thriving in life because they have hope and they have this other option to fill that gap that is in Hashimoto's care. And so I forgot the second part of your question. Like I said, my brain. What was the second part of your question?
What impact do you hope to leave with your readers?
My impact that I hope to leave with my readers is that they don't feel alone and they feel that hope in knowing there is another path forward that they haven't explored yet, and getting excited about this other path and that there is more for them to be doing. They just need the right resources, tools, and education to get there.
Yeah. And not to think that having Hashimoto's or hypothyroidism is a life sentence, right?
Correct. Yes, it is absolutely not a life sentence. It absolutely is not. And I know how easy it is to feel like that because we lack all of the education, resources, and tools when we get diagnosed. So it's so easy to feel that way, but we absolutely do not need to feel that way. There is absolutely a way forward.
Is there a particular chapter that stands out to you especially powerful or transformative?
Well, I'm a little biased that the first chapter will be because I dish and get very vulnerable with my own story to help people, relate to me and feel like they're not alone for sure. I know how impactful stories can be, but if we want to talk about like an actual, there's so many, you guys. It's such a quick read. Like there's so many chapters, but one that stands out for me, there's a lot of good information in there, but one that stands out for me is honestly the last one on mindset, because I think, we all want to feel better. But I think we skip some of the most vital steps, and that is our actual mindset about what's going on. And, as easy as it to say, like, I don't want this anymore, I want to change, identifying what actual stage of change you are currently in is super important before starting like this lifelong health journey, because again, your autoimmune is with you forever. It's not going anywhere, and you've got to work every day to keep it in remission. And so I think understanding what your mindset is when it comes to making this lifestyle change is important. And then we go over like the mindset of trauma. And when a lot of us are in fight or flight mode constantly, we cannot heal when we are in fight or flight mode. And so it's standing back and addressing, hey, am I in fight or flight mode right now? Is there some trauma healing maybe I need to do? Is there maybe some therapy I need to go through first so that I can get into a calmer state and start healing? Then, like I said, understanding the change mindset. Am I even ready for a change? What steps am I willing to take? What am I willing to do right now? Just addressing that. Is it just an idea I think would be great right now, but I'm nowhere near motivated to do anything? So understanding that, because if you don't and you go into a health journey, you honestly fail a lot. You fail a lot and then you get discouraged, but you didn't set yourself up correctly at the beginning. You had no awareness of where you were actually at to get through that. And then the third mindset one that we go through is really that limiting belief mindset, right? Like, we are on this journey. Nobody else can do it for us. We are on this. We have to give ourselves like a pep talk almost every day. We have to encourage ourselves. If we're not checking in on our negative self-talk every day, and listen, trust me, I've been through this. I am the meanest person in the entire world to myself and the kindest to everybody else. And so it's really checking in with yourself and like, are you the one saying, hey, you suck at this today? There's no way that you can do this? Because then we need to put that in check. And we need to start giving you positive affirmations every single day of, I can do this. Hey, I fell off the wagon today, but you know what? It's going to happen. It's part of consistency. Or, hey, everybody does this. It's giving yourself that understanding and grace along the way. Because again, you will fail if you continue to be the one hounding yourself every time you try and make these big changes. And so I feel like that one is a really, really good one to end with, just to give everybody all the information, the relation, and, we'll be empowered to be like, yes, I want to do this journey. I want to take back control of my thyroid health. And that's so exciting. And I want that for everybody, but we have to start with our mindset as well. And so that's why I kind of end the book on that chapter, to really get people thinking and do that check-in with themselves, that assessment of where am I at before I start this.
Yeah, I love that. Because I was going to ask you, do you think before even someone starts doing the testing and all that stuff, if they're apprehensive because of the cost or whatnot, like the mindset work is definitely kind of one of the first things to address?
Yeah, I like to ask the question, if I gave you the answer today of how to put your Hashimoto's in remission, would you do it? Because a lot of people want to say yes. I mean, who wouldn't? We don't want to be miserable. Yeah. We want to say yes, but we're also unwilling to. Like, we put a lot of barriers in front of ourselves to not do that, to get to that thing. Like, once we're searching for this answer, and it's like, once we get the answer, we're like, oh no, thanks, I don't need that. I'd rather just sit here. I don't need to do any of these things. I don't need to change. I don't need to heal anything. I know what it is now. I'm good. Right. There is a lot of resistance, and it's not about forcing somebody into their health journey, because they really have to be the one to take it all on. At the end of the day, whether you work with a health coach or not, or, like a functional medicine practitioner, they're the guide and you are still doing all of the work. So it really comes down to mindset. And if you're ready for this, if the client, the patient is ready for it, and it's not like, we don't want to ever guilt or shame people into, oh, then I guess you don't care, or whatever excuse we want to use. It's not even about that. It's just, if they're meeting resistance, they are purposely putting those blocks in. Oh, my spouse said no. Oh, this is too expensive. Oh, some of those, there may be truth to, and we have to understand that. But also, we have to understand for ourselves that there's such easy little blocks that we're putting in front of ourselves to prevent us from getting what we actually want. And so we really have to address the mindset pieces of, am I standing in my own way? Or are these actually barriers?
Yeah. Those are very valid points.
Yeah.
Because change is very scary.
Very.
Sometimes you really have, there would be some people that needs to really suffer before they finally break through that fear.
Yep.
Like, oh, I need to make changes. Or, so it just really depends on each person. Like, we can't force them to start their healing journey.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that is a very strong point that I tell people about, is we are really good at making ourselves suffer. We are really good at making ourselves miserable. We really are. And we truly do say, oh, I can go further. I can endure this. Sometimes we'll even get outward praise of like, oh, you pushed so hard. Like, you went without sleep, like, and praising those habits. But what we're doing is sabotaging ourselves. But we're really good at making our own selves suffer until we're like, okay, I have finally had enough. And that is something to own as well. Like with people, I was actually the same way. I make myself suffer 100% of the time before I'm ready to ask for help. I'm terrible at asking for help. I think a lot of people are, and we want to keep pushing and pushing and pushing until we can't anymore. And it's really that breaking point. That's why people come so desperate for help, is because they have been pushing for a very, very long time. And now they're finally ready to ask for help. And as much as we don't want people to suffer, we can't control that, unfortunately. It is very self-ingrained, very self-ingrained.
I heard someone say that I guess it's kind of like an addiction, like that, like keeping yourself stuck in a situation even though you're suffering, because that's where you feel safe, and you really have to
Yep.
break that barrier, like with the mindset thing.
Yeah, and it's so interesting you bring that up, because I had that pointed out to me just freshly a couple weeks ago, and it's so true. A lot of us, if we're scared of, becoming an addict to anything, right? We're just like, oh my God, no, I don't ever want to do that. But what we don't realize is we are addicts to the negativity, the self-sabotage, the drama, the whatever. You can be an addict to other things outside of substances. And I think sometimes we forget that. And then, like you said, what happens is you get stuck in that cycle because it's comfortable. It's what you know, even though it's literally stressing you out, it's tearing you apart, it's doing no good for you. It's literally the comfort of what you know. Your body doesn't know how to be in joy, in peace, in love. It doesn't know how to do that. And so you don't know how to help yourself. You don't know how to give yourself that time, that energy, that love, that attention that it needs to heal itself, because you're stuck in, you're going to suffer, because that's what we're familiar with. And so it actually is just psychologically like a reaction of putting those barriers in front of you, because it's what's safe. It's what's comfortable. It's what you're used to. You don't know what it feels like to self-love, to give to yourself.
Yeah. All right, before we end, I love that. So we're gonna end it on this note, but I'd I'd like to ask you, do you have a favorite affirmation, or like a mantra to kind of like get you out of that negative mindset that you share with your clients or you use for
Yeah.
yourself?
I love this question so much. I love it. My affirmations have, definitely changed over time depending on, what I'm dealing with, or what trauma or negative mindset I've moved through, and where I can establish new ones. So they can always develop, know that. They can always be whatever it is you need, whatever it is that you want support from. But for me, the one I always come back to that helps me get out of fight or flight immediately is, I am who I am, and that is enough. Just bringing yourself back to that calm state of nothing else matters. I am who I am, and that is enough. And it's almost like that end piece of like, that is enough is kind of also telling yourself like, that's enough, Jasmine. Stop with the negativity. Stop with all this stuff. Like, I am who I am, and that is enough. And that's my favorite one.
Yeah, I love that, because as women, going back to being women, like we're always thinking that we're not doing enough, that we're not
Yes.
enough, and that we
Yep.
need to do more. And that's really, I feel like that's kind of one of the problems that leads us to any symptoms, right? Any,
Yeah.
like eventually, like any illness, if we keep being stuck in that negative loop and constant stress.
I agree 100%. And that is that's a big narrative driver, is the worthy piece, the I'm not enough piece. And we all feel it. We all feel it. We can feel it a lot differently than other people. We can feel it for different periods of time. It doesn't matter. We all feel that. And so I always come back to, I am who I am, and that is enough, because that is truly all that matters. our space and our world, like we're so worried because we're focused on what everything looks like to everyone else. And it's just kind of coming back home almost.
Yeah. Very beautiful. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jasmine, for joining me today. I'm sure you might come back. Show us your book real quick.
Oh yeah, so this is my book.
Can they find your book? How can they get in touch with you if they want to contact you and, have questions, or if they want to work with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Jasmine Parker Coaching is my handle. You can get my book either on my website, jasmineparkercoaching.com/hidden healing book. We are running a exclusive author bonus on my website up until next week if you go and grab it then. Otherwise, you can get it on Amazon. It is promoing right now if you're an ebook reader for 99 cents. Otherwise, like I said, Jasmine Parker Coaching is my Instagram handle. That's where you can reach me.
Everything's going to be on the show notes.
Yay.
And thank you for listening. If you got to the end, and we'll see you next time. Stay rebellious.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please click the subscribe button, share it with others, post about it in social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from me or suggest topics, you can follow me on Instagram at Fatima Pagtakan or at The Wellness Rebel Show. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.